Hey guys, welcome on in for today's video. Just going to be touching on one poll. It's from Emerson out of the state of New Hampshire, and we have some massive swings in contrast to the previous Emerson poll that we got out of the state, and things are looking really good specifically for Sanders and Buttigieg. If you're interested in looking at all the data from this particular poll, I'll have a link posted to it at the bottom of the video description. So heading right into this one, we have, for a smaller state like New Hampshire, a reasonably strong sample size of Democratic primary voters, that sample size being 549 in New Hampshire. Now, a lot of these state-specific polls, specifically in New Hampshire, are notoriously small in their sample size, but this is a reasonable number to take a look at. Sanders leading the pack, surging into first place with 26% of support, followed by Buttigieg, who's in second place at 22%, where Biden and Warren have taken a significant step back, each of them in a tie for third at 14 percentage points apiece. And just taking a look at this major shift. So the previous New Hampshire poll from Emerson was back in September, and Biden led the pack at 24%. He's fallen 10 points since that period in time. And Elizabeth Warren followed at 21%, but she's now down 7 percentage points, back down to 14%. Meanwhile, Sanders doubled his support from 13 points, now up to 26, so he's a positive 13. And then Buttigieg also doubled his support, where he was at 11% back in September. Now he's up to 22 points in this poll. So some fascinating shifting around in the state of New Hampshire from this Emerson poll. And actually, over the past couple of days, we've gotten two polls out from New Hampshire, and both of them have Bernie Sanders leading the pack. The one that I touched on yesterday had Elizabeth Warren in second place, followed by Buttigieg in third, and then Biden was in fourth. So Biden continuing to show weakness poll after poll in these early primary and caucus states, specifically Iowa and New Hampshire. And it feels like Buttigieg has stolen a lot of Biden's thunder in these early states, getting a lot more of that older voter share, as well as the centrists and the moderates seem to be flocking a bit more. So more so towards Buttigieg, and that is really hurting Biden. Now, behind the top four, we have Tulsi Gabbard, who continues to show strength as well in New Hampshire, and that's important for her in terms of trying to get onto the debate stage. Part of the equation of figuring out who's on the debate stage, part of that is doing well in early states, and Gabbard has a decent poll here, bringing in 6 percentage points, which is quite a bit higher than her national numbers. Andrew Yang there at 5%, Kamala Harris at 4%, Tom Steyer at 3 points, Klobuchar at 2, along with Booker, and pretty devastating stuff there from the senators out of Minnesota and New Jersey with Klobuchar and Booker. Both of their campaigns really on life support at this point, where a lot of these key important early states, they're not necessarily polling all that well, and then nationally, pretty much a non-factor. And then those centrists who have more recently been talking about or have thrown their hats in the ring, that being Bloomberg and Patrick, only at 1 and 0 percentage points, respectively. And then everyone else is at a pretty non-consequential amount of support in the state of New Hampshire. Now, just to take a look at how the demographics break up here. So by age, those who are under the age of 50, Sanders is crushing it with that group, where he has 38% of support, followed by Warren, who's at 16, Buttigieg at 12, and then Biden at just 8. But those voters who are over the age of 50, this is where Buttigieg leads at 32%, followed by Biden at 19%. If we continue to see this trend where Buttigieg is bringing in more of the older voter demographics, then that's really going to hurt Biden, and we're going to see a lot more of these polls potentially where he's fading back to the pack. It hasn't necessarily translated as much nationally, but it's definitely been the case in Iowa and New Hampshire, where Biden is consistently in that 3rd to 4th place position. And then with this group over the age of 50, we have Sanders at 15 points and Warren at 11%. Now, if I had to put my own money on it at this point in time, I would say the top 3 are going to be Sanders in first. I'm also still a little bit skeptical on Buttigieg. I think I still would give the edge to Warren to grab second place in the state, also given the fact that it's neighboring to Massachusetts. But also I feel like Sanders is the front runner to probably go on and win New Hampshire because it's the bordering state to Vermont, and in a Democratic primary, you're going to have a lot of like-minded voters in New Hampshire like what you're going to have in Vermont. So that's going to play well for Sanders. Also, Sanders did extremely well in the state of New Hampshire in 2016. That probably positively carries over for him in 2020. So then behind Sanders and Warren, at this point in time, I'd probably put Buttigieg, given the fact that he's been surging in these early states while Biden has been taking a step back. So that's where I'd probably cap it at this point on, but we're still a couple of months out from actually heading into the New Hampshire primary. Going down, taking a look at some more of these numbers, in terms of the ideology, those who said that they were very, very liberal supported Sanders the most at 47%, followed by Warren at 18 and Buttigieg at 12. But those who said that they were moderate and conservative, Buttigieg led that group at 23%, followed by Biden at 18. But Sanders also doing reasonably well for him at 17 points with that moderate conservative group of the Democratic primary voters. And then also, this is something that we saw in yesterday's New Hampshire poll that I didn't touch on, and it's the fact that Sanders continues to have the most committed supporters, where they ask, have you already made up your mind? Are you committed to your candidate? Sanders did the best, where 65% of his supporters said that they were definitely going to vote for him. And then those numbers have been a bit weaker for the other top-tier candidates, where Warren had 47% pledged to her, Buttigieg at 40%, and then Biden at just 36% saying that they were committed to him. And actually, those numbers were pretty similar to the New Hampshire poll that we saw yesterday that had Sanders in first place in terms of those individuals who were committed to these different candidates. Now, taking a look at the head-to-head matchups for the general election when you bring the Republicans into the mix, and we can see that it's relatively competitive here. So Buttigieg actually does the best head-to-head against Trump in this poll, where he's leading by 6 points, and then Biden and Sanders each lead Trump by 4 points in New Hampshire. And then Andrew Yang and Elizabeth Warren are each losing to Trump by 2 percentage points. Now, if you give people the option of being undecided or unsure, that gives a bit more strength to the Democratic candidates, where Sanders has a 7-point lead, as well as Buttigieg, same 7-point lead. And then Warren has a 4-point lead along with Andrew Yang and Joe Biden. So those are all the numbers that I wanted to touch on here in this particular video. Actually, just one more here. Almost forgot to touch on it. And that's this Senate matchup that we have in New Hampshire. Jeanne Shaheen is the incumbent Democrat, and her approval numbers have been looking really strong, and that's carrying over into the polling, where one of her potential challengers is Republican Cory Lewandowski. She has a 12-point lead over him, and with independents, she's leading 54-30. Shaheen is looking pretty good in terms of her running for this Senate seat in 2020. She has the incumbency advantage, and the polling, at least early on in the process, has been pretty favorable to her chances to continue to retain this one. So those were all the numbers that I wanted to touch on in this video. If you like more of this type of content in the future, consider clicking that subscribe button, and I hope to see you guys back here for my next video.